J. Bauer Bell famously said, "The assassination at Sarajevo was certainly the crucial precedent of the European war that its conspirators had sought, but was not the historical cause. The assassination acted as a lever, prying the various powers into predictable paths." What he was talking about was the causes of World War I. While there was an initial spark of that war, it was a runaway train that you could see coming from a mile away. And those predictable paths were the main causes. Main being a acronym for militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. You want to know what caused World War I? Remember the main causes. So this is Unit 5, Part 1A, the causes of World War I. So first, let's talk militarism. Militarism is the buildup of military forces by a country. A buildup not during war. This is peacetime buildup of your military. So for example, Germany decided it had to build up its army and build up its navy to compete with Great Britain. England at all times maintained a well-equipped navy to protect its empire. Other small countries like Japan and Italy are massively increasing their military. If you look at before World War I, the 4 years leading up to it, the increase in defense expenditures, France, Britain, Russia, Germany especially, are pouring massive resources into their military. And while war has not necessarily started yet, countries are already acting like a war is about to happen. It's like the idea of to put all this money into a military, it starts to create the idea that, well, you have to use it. And it also creates a situation where historically nations used to declare war, and then they'd have to build up their military, and they'd rise up, and maybe, there'd be a chance to maybe boil it back down. Whereas World War I, all these nations had their armies ready to go, where the moment anything happens, bam, we're going to war. Arguably, though, this was a huge cause, but possibly the biggest cause was the system of alliances. So countries promised to help each other in help if they're attacked by another. And there are so many examples, it was ridiculous. There was this web that was out of control that interlinked and interlocked each other. So, for example, France promised to help Russia in case they were attacked by Germany. Great Britain promised they would help Belgium if they were attacked by someone such as Germany. Germany promised to help Austria-Hungary if they were attacked by Russia. Russia promised to help Serbia if they were attacked by anyone. It was a complicated web that only got more and more intricate as time went on. So this is just, without alliances, this is Europe, 1914. A couple notables to point out: you have the German Empire, you have the Austro-Hungary, you have the Russian Empire, you have Italy, the Ottoman Empire, you have the Balkans with several new nations who have emerged during this time period, including the very important Serbia, who we'll talk about in a moment. You have the United Kingdom, who's going to play a major role. So let's start talking alliances. So essentially what you have is you have this connection of the Balkans. They have connections of either aids or treaties or alliances with Austria-Hungary, Italy, Germany, the Ottoman Empire, as do they with Russia, France, and Great Britain. You have essentially this connection of Serbia saying they might fight with Austria. Austria is threatening Serbia, and Russia's behind Austria saying, don't you dare do anything or I'll step in. And right behind Russia is Germany saying, don't you, Russia, dare do anything. And right behind Germany is France saying, you don't dare make one move. And right behind him is Britain waddling in. And it's just this out of control mentality where if one single nation declares war on another, suddenly everyone in Europe is involved in a war where they didn't even anticipate anything happening. Great Britain is 4 or 5 degrees away, but this domino effect pulls everyone to war. Next up, and so when the domino falls, it starts as a war between two countries. It starts between just Austria-Hungary and Serbia, but because of this web of alliances, almost all of Europe, it is easier to count the nations that weren't obligated to step in than the nations that were. Next up, you have imperialism. So we know imperialism. We just did a unit on it. The practice of controlling other countries. We talked about Great Britain. They had their empires in India, Australia, South Africa, Germany, Italy, other European countries. They're trying to control areas in Africa and Asia. We didn't really talk about the United States, but they've established their superiority in Central and South America, the Philippines, and Hawaii. And so they're maintaining colonies for the purpose of trade, along with imperialism, in South America, Asia, Africa, essentially, and they want it for creating markets and manufactured goods. But essentially, the issue is every European nation wanted to expand their empire, but unclaimed land is running out. There's only so much land in this world. The scramble for Africa is already over. China has already been staked out. India has already been cornered off by Great Britain. South America, the United States, has pretty much claimed that as their sphere of influence. There's no more land if you want to establish an empire, and rising nations like Germany, like Austria-Hungary, like Russia, there's not any land left for them to claim. Japan as well. They want to establish empires, but they can't claim it without taking it forcefully from another nation. And Africa being a perfect example. If a nation like Germany, who only got small corners, German East Africa, Southwest Africa, the Cameroons, if Germany wants more of Africa, they have to take it from the French or the British. And then finally, nationalism. The belief in one's government to the point of forcing smaller nations to have your government. Great Britain with Canada, India, and Australia. And this belief was supported by Darwinism. The strongest will survive. This is what we talked about with social Darwinism. It also created a belief that your nation was culturally and military superior to everyone else. Well, that doesn't really work. If Germany thinks it's the greatest, and Great Britain thinks it's the greatest, and France thinks it's the greatest, and Bosnia thinks it's the greatest, and Serbia thinks it's the greatest, and the Ottoman Empire thinks it's the greatest, someone has to prove they're truly the greatest, and war is the theater where they will prove we are the greatest. And it's also a desire by nationalist groups to break away from their empire to form their own nation, which ties right into the actual immediate cause of World War I, that being the assassination. But we're going to rewind for just a moment to as far back as 1873. Now, you don't have to write this down, but I just want to show you the road to World War I. You have a series of alliances, the three Emperors' Leagues, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia. You have the Dual Alliance, Germany of Austria-Hungary, the Triple Alliance, the Reassurance Treaty, the Franco-Russian Alliance, the British-Japanese Alliance, the Entente Cordiale, the First Moroccan Crisis, the Russo-Japanese War, which we talked about last unit, the Anglo-Russian Convention, the Triple Entente, the Bosnian Crisis, the Second Moroccan Crisis, the First Balkan War, the Second Balkan War. So you can see, even before World War I, you have alliance after alliance, after war, after war, after war. And these are all tiny little crises and tiny little exchanges, but they're all being put out, but all it's doing is creating this, creating more and more pressure and more boiling into an explosion that's going to be World War I. And that explosion finally happened with the assassination. So what effectively caused World War I? It was the assassination of Austro-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and he was killed by Serbian nationalists. He was killed by an organization called the Black Hand. The actual individual was Gavril Princip, but he was working with a whole group of nationalists who were trying to kill Franz Ferdinand. So it wasn't like Lee Harvey Oswald who was acting alone. This was a whole group who was trying to assassinate Franz Ferdinand. So the issue was that the nation, this happened in Sarajevo, Bosnia, which was owned by Austria-Hungary, but ethnically consisted mostly of Serbians and Croatians who wanted to join Serbia. So Gavril Princip was Serbian, who was fighting on behalf of Bosnia, who wanted to break away from Austria-Hungary. So remember, we talked about the issue of nationalism. So this is the Austria-Hungary Empire. The problem is there's more than just Austrians and Hungarians. Within this empire, you have Bohemians, you have Galatians, you have Transylvanians, you have Italians, you have Ukrainians, you have Croatians, you have Bosnians, you have Herzegovinians. This is a massive empire that consisted realistically of 7 or 8 actual nations. And so Serbia is independent, but they look at Bosnia and they think Bosnia belongs in Serbia. And so Austro-Hungarian Empire, Serbia right here, Serbia looks at Bosnia and says, that should be us. Those people consider themselves Bosnian. Those people, those people consider themselves Serbian. Why should they be part of this empire that logistically does not make any sense? And the crazy thing about the assassination, it's one of those freak moments where sometimes you look at history and you wonder, was something just destined to happen? Because the actual attempt on Gavril Princip, so if you keep watching this, the actual attempt, a grenade was tossed into his car and bounced off it and missed him. And so Gavril Princip walks away, and doesn't he walk and stumble upon the very person he attempted to kill earlier, Franz Ferdinand, and had a second chance. Imagine, if you will, Lee Harvey Oswald tries to shoot John F. Kennedy, misses, walks away, walks to a diner and walks out, and there is John F. Kennedy again, and he gets a second chance to kill him. And that is what happened with poor Franz Ferdinand. So, after that, you have the chain of events that are rapidly descending to war. Austria-Hungary, they demand Serbia allow Austria to control their government. That is the ultimatum. And it's a series of demands that Austria-Hungary declares. And Austria-Hungary knew Serbia couldn't possibly accept these demands. Austria-Hungary knew they were going to declare war. So Serbia, they agreed to some of the terms, but they couldn't allow Austria-Hungary just to control their government. Serbia was trying to help Bosnia break away from the Austro-Hungarian government. So Serbia mobilizes its forces out of fear. Austria-Hungary sees that and they say, well, we have to mobilize our forces. So July 28th, 1914, Austria-Hungary invades Serbia. And so then it gets bigger. Germany warns Russia not to support Serbia. Russia says, and they send their forces to support their fellow Slavics, and in come the Russians, and then in come the Austro-Hungarians. So Germany prepares for war to support its Austro-Hungarian ally, and France prepares for war to support its Russian ally, and so it's immediately out of control. You have one little spark in the Balkans. We'll rewind quickly. You have one spark right here in Sarajevo, and that spark explodes, and all of Europe is suddenly involved. And in one quick summer, all of Europe has declared war. So that is part one, and in one quick assassination, suddenly all of Europe has declared war. But really, we should have seen this coming because of the main causes. So even if that assassination doesn't happen, realistically, something else could have also caused this. So part two, we're going to talk about the war itself.